there's a lot going on right now in the country, and it seems like this whole thing with the oil prices, the economy, the numbers that just came out today on employment, the stock market getting a little shaky, the budget stuff. I mean, there's a thread that seems to run through them all that has to do with money.
Tom, you're right. There are enormous issues facing this country. Sometimes I think people look at them separately, but they are all tied together. And in my view, we are very much at a pivotal moment in American history, and that moment has to do whether we surrender to an ideology which says that the wealthy and the powerful will have even more wealth, will have even more power, while the middle class continues to sink and poverty increases. And not only economically, but politically, the people with money will be able to do virtually everything that they want. And I know, we've been talking about what goes on in some of these Republican states, the attacks on labor, the attacks on working families, the attacks on women. But the same thing is happening in Washington, except on a grander scope. The Republican budget is the most extremist piece of major legislation probably brought forth in our lifetime that actually passed one of the bodies of the Congress, the U.S. House. And what that does, and you have to give the Republicans credit for it, they really put it out on the table. What they say is that despite the fact that the budget deficit was caused to a significant degree, not totally by Republican policies, 2 wars unpaid for, Wall Street bailout unpaid for, a major prescription drug program unpaid for, tax breaks for the rich unpaid for, despite all of that, what they are saying is we are going to continue the policy of giving huge tax breaks. We're going to increase it. Another $1 trillion over 10 years to the wealthiest people in this country, the millionaires and the billionaires, and then we're going to make savage cuts in programs that working families desperately depend upon, especially in the midst of this severe recession when so many people are hurting. So tax breaks for billionaires, doing away with Medicare as we know it, and giving people a voucher to go out and try to negotiate a pro plan with a private insurance company, which will mean much greater out-of-pocket expense for seniors, $770 billion in cuts in Medicaid, which will have a huge impact on families that have their loved ones, their parents in a nursing home where Medicaid ends up paying a lot of that bill. Don't know what happens when you make $700+ billion in cuts. Families are going to have to pick up a lot of that bill. Cuts in education, cuts in Pell Grant program, cuts in the environmental protection, cuts in nutrition. So this, if I have ever seen an example of the Robin Hood proposal in reverse, take from the poor and give to the rich, this is what it is about. So we are in the midst of an ideological struggle in which our Republican colleagues, backed by some of the wealthiest people in this country, are intensifying their war against the middle class and working families. And we have got to fight back. And I think the good news is that the American people are beginning to catch on to the magnitude and the horror of what the Republicans are proposing. But our job is to strengthen the president to make sure that he stands tall and isn't simply able to come forward and say, I'm not as bad as the Republicans. I want him to stand tall and to say, you know what, yeah, we've got to move toward deficit reduction, but we are going to ask the wealthiest people in this country to start paying their fair share of taxes. We are going to do away with all of the loopholes that exist, which enable very profitable corporations to make billions of dollars a year and yet pay nothing in taxes. We're going to do away with the legislation that allows corporations and wealthy people to stash their money in the Cayman Islands and in Bermuda offshore tax havens, losing $100 billion a year in revenue for the United States. We're going to address those issues. We're going to talk about significant cuts in military spending, which has now tripled since 1997. We're going to bring our troops home from Afghanistan as quickly as we possibly can. So the point is not only to take on this horrendous, outrageous Republican proposal, but to make sure that the president and the Democrats stand tall for working families and for the middle class. We are focusing on right now another issue out there related to everything else, and that is the issue of speculation in oil futures and what that is meaning for high gas prices at the pump. Prices are going down a bit, but here in Vermont they were just a week or two ago at $4 a gallon, a little bit lower now. And this is having a huge impact on the lives of millions of working families, especially in rural areas like my state, where people travel long distance to work by car. And this is money that's just coming right out of their wallets, which they can, in many cases, ill afford to pay. What we have done is we met with a fellow named Gary Gensler. Gensler is the chairman of an agency called the Commodity Futures Trading Corporation. And I had 6 senators in my office and myself meeting with him. And the message was that when we passed the financial reform bill, one of the provisions in it was that his agency, the CFTC, was supposed to eliminate excessive speculation on the part of the financial industry in driving up oil prices. Interestingly enough, a few weeks ago, about 3 weeks ago, a fellow named Rex Tillerson, who's the CEO of ExxonMobil, I mean, not one of my favorite companies, a company that's in itself ripping off the American people. But you know what Tillerson said to a committee in the Senate? He said that he estimated that up to 40% of the cost of a gallon of gas or a barrel of oil has to do not with supply and demand, but with speculation from the financial industries. And we believe now, we've heard from very knowledgeable people, that about 80% of the oil futures market is now controlled not by end users, i.e. the airline companies, the trucking companies, the fuel dealers, people who actually deal with oil or purchase oil, use oil, but by just people who are involved in speculation. And that number has gone up from 30% 10 years ago to 80% now. And that is one of the factors significantly driving up the price of oil. So we had a meeting with Gensler. It was quite unsatisfactory. I don't think he has any sense of urgency about the need to do what he was required to do, which is to end this speculation. He was required to do that in January. So we're going to introduce legislation to make them do that and just put limits on the amount of ownership that the financial institutions can have in terms of oil futures. So that's a huge issue that's not only impacting individuals, but impacting the entire economy, which takes us to the rather bad news that we heard today about low job growth and how unemployment is going up. And obviously this is an issue that we have to be aggressive about.
Yeah, absolutely. Senator Bernie Sanders is with us. It's our Brunch with Bernie hour here on the Thom Hartmann Program, our national town hall meeting. The senator will be taking your calls and questions next. 866-987-THOM, 866-745-2667. We'll be right back.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
And check out Senator Sanders' website, sanders.senate.gov. It's a gold mine.